Hey y'all,
What's going on, everyone?
I'm Jay,
Now I'm Chris the Bird Nerd,
and we
and we
are
are
the
the
Bird
Bird
Brains.
Brains. Ba-dum. It's good to be
We,
back, Jay. Good to be back.
yeah, yeah, we are, if you can hear it in my voice, battling through a hilarious bout of the flu over here, and
Got
travel and being busy and everything else. But I actually, I told Chris this already. I actually was asleep tonight and set an alarm, and my wife was like, "What the hell's that alarm for?" And I was like, we're going to pod."
That's
So.
dedication right there.
Yeah, so trying
True
hard
love of the birds.
to get y'all some episodes out, keep things current, not let life get too much in the way here. But here we are and we're ready to rock. Got a kind of an interesting one for you tonight, maybe a called a cautionary tale.
Yeah.
And tonight we're going to talk about the darker side of birds. Dun dun dun.
The Bird Brains Podcast with Chris and Jay. The Bird Brains Podcast with Chris and Jay. The Bird Brains Podcast with Chris and Jay. Bird Brains, Bird Brains. The Bird Brains Podcast with Chris and Jay. The Bird Brains Podcast with Chris and Jay. The Bird Brains Podcast with Chris and Jay. Bird Brains, Bird Brains.
All right. So before we talk about that,
New
go to the
Zealand.
Perchville. Go to the Perchville on New Zealand's website. Use code BirdBrains, 10% off for all your supplies, seed, nutrients, all the stuff you need, all the stuff you're asking me about in my DMs. That's where you can find it. You can also find these things, which are the BirdBrains Perch Box. This is the BirdBrains specific one, but they have other ones. So if you
Yep.
have, macaw like Chris does, you can hear Candy playing with toys in the background.
Yeah, I'm keeping her awake.
Um,
She's gonna be grumpy tomorrow.
that's okay. That doesn't affect me at all. Um, but this is like a monthly subscription box. It'll have different base items. So like there's stuff in here you'll automatically get, and then there's also add-ons. So you can add on your seed for the month. You can add on toys, supplies, medication, and you get a reduced cost as part of it. So, you
And
know,
Jay, I want to know. We've had several people. So when we launched the Perch Box, we had several people reach out and say, "Hey, subscribe to it. Just got my first Perch Box." I believe you're going to be posting this video, but I'd love to see like what did you guys get this month or this last month? Like, let us know if you still have the subscription. Let us know what came in the Perch Box, what you liked, what you didn't like about it. Post some pictures if we can. We'd love to start highlighting some of the things that you guys are getting through New Zealand and kind of give some shout outs back to you guys for supporting us, supporting New Zealand. So let us know, what did you guys receive either this month or this last month on your subscription, or if you went through and just purchased some stuff off New Zealand. Let us know so that we can start highlighting some of that in our upcoming podcast.
yeah, I will shout out. You send me something you got from New Zealand, I'll shout you out every time. You're trying to grow your little bird Instagram or whatever, I will do that. I will help you do
Yeah.
that if you get stuff from New Zealand for sure. Um, all right. So the darker side of birds. There is no downside to owning birds. And I would never admit that there could be. So, this is more about the people
I don't know.
and
My wife would beg to differ. So
well, she's not on this episode. If you don't speak, you can't be heard.
yeah, that's true.
Um, so birds are perfect. They've done nothing wrong and we love them. Um,
Yes.
but of course, with anything that people get involved with, especially when it comes to money, there are always some shifty, shady characters. So, we thought we'd share some of the things we've come across, in the bird industry that have been shady. And I know I've got a couple stories, and I'm sure Chris does too.
Yeah, and
Um,
I and maybe Jay, just to preference before we share some of our examples, I think it still comes back to our theme, right? Do your homework, know the people you're working with as best as you can. Try to do some research around birds that you're interested or trying to get. Um, Use caution if you're if you are purchasing birds online through other breeders, things like that, make sure you have second opinions. Make sure you've got someone who can verify breeders, etc. Because there are some shady things out there, and Jay and I have witnessed and experienced some of those in the past, and so hopefully our stories will help educate you guys, just to make sure that we want to keep the hobby as fun and as fresh as we possibly can, but also there are some cautionary tales out there as well.
Yeah, and there's some. I would say there's like a common sense element to this. So my first story, and I think I've told versions of it before, but in high school, um, and I don't think. I mean, I know that Jay now would never have this happen to him. But this in this story, I think I'm 16 and I was an idiot. I'm not saying I'm not still an idiot, but it's a different kind of idiot. Um, so the this is one of those like if it's too good to be true, ask more questions.
Yeah,
So I was on Craigslist in Atlanta where I grew up, and I found a guy selling a pair of pin-tailed Widas, and they were, I believe, $50, which even in 2000 whatever money, that was cheap.
yeah.
I had never seen them before. This is also before the like days of smartphones. So like you could Google stuff. Google existed, but like to get to this guy's house, I printed out MapQuest directions for those, might be some people that listen to this that are too young to know what I'm even talking about. But
Oh,
before
the
you
good old
had
days.
before you had GPS on your, even in the little like GPS box that you could buy, before you had GPS on your phone, you went to this website called MapQuest, put the other person's address in, and then you could print out the directions ahead of time and follow them to get there. Um,
And they were still as confusing as crap.
yeah, yeah, it
So
wasn't.
bad.
We have it real easy nowadays. So I get to this guy's house, and he's like, he's got these Widas. He's got other birds. He's got, I think, Gouldians and some birds like that. The normal. I don't want to say normal, but like the more typical birds that we would keep now. And he's got the Widas in a separate cage, and they seem healthy. I watched them for a long time. He's got a hen and a male, and they're acting normal. The male's in breeding condition. He's got the long feathers. Like, oh man, these birds are pretty. And I'm talking to the guy, and he's like, yeah, I just haven't had any success with them. Just kind of not interested. Like $50, just looking to get out of them what I paid for them. And what I now know is this guy definitely had to have paid more than that because he like now a pair of Widas is, even if you find them cheap, several $100s,
Yeah.
and so he was selling them just to sell them, get rid of them, and everything seemed great. Bought the birds on my merry way back to my house. Did not quarantine because I was an idiot about that too, and into the aviary they go. Well, it turns out some of you are already laughing that pin-tailed whitus, in addition to being a parasitic brooder, which makes them super hard to breed, which means they need another species to lay that the hen lays eggs in a different nest, and a different species rears their young. In addition to being a parasitic brooder, they are also quite aggressive.
Very
And
aggressive.
so within 10 minutes of me putting the WIDAs into my very peaceful community aviary, it looks like the bad part of like the Superman movie before Superman shows up. The These birds are just attacking everybody. Like I'm talking about not even with just their beaks, but like I watched the male like full on go claws out at another bird. And so within like 15 minutes, they're flying back and forth, dominating my whole aviary. And all the other birds are like on one perch up in the corner, like terrified. So if it's too good to be true, it probably is. So I ended up having to rehome the Widas. I think probably I don't think whoever I sold them to, I was like, yeah, these birds are mean as hell. Like they got to go in their own thing.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
I don't think I even made any money. I was like, just $50, we'll call it good. That's what I paid for them, and found somebody that was set up to take them. But yeah, so that's my first story. Is like if it's too good to be true, it probably is.
Um, I've got one, and this one didn't happen to me personally, but I've come across several examples of it, and it really is it comes back to scammers. There's a lot of scammers online. You look at Facebook pages, and you get several. If you're part of, I'm part of multiple different bird groups in Facebook, right? And you get certain people, and then they'll try and sell birds on there that are scams, etc. You know, they've got fake pictures on there or pictures that they stole from other breeders that have posted online, things like that. We've got a local, kind of like a local Craigslist here, and you'll get people that from out of state, and they'll post hyacinth macaws for like $1,000, you know, and coming back to what Jay said, if it's too good to be true, more times than not, it is. The exception is candy, right? I just got candy for free thanks to Jay. That is a too good to be true story, but was for real. But when you're looking online, you know, please beware of that. I've had bird breeders that have been scammed out of thousands of dollars to get these birds that are super rare, and they're getting them for a super good price that, you know, it's half of what they really are worth, things like that. If you come across those, unless you specifically know that breeder or have someone that can vouch for them, you're gonna be out a lot of money. So my friend did that for a hyacinth macaw. They were looking to get a hyacinth macaw. They had other birds. They were experienced bird breeder. Um, Reached out through Craigslist actually, to get this bird that was a few states over, put a deposit down, and then they took the deposit and ran, right? And so, it was a hefty deposit. So just make sure, especially in today's world where everything's online and we've got connections all around the world, and can potentially have really good things come from that as far as reaching out to breeders across state lines or other countries, etc. That can be a benefit and get birds to you. But if you've got a rare bird that you're looking for, whether it's a macaw or a finch species that, like Jay said, is $50, or a lot deal that is way too good to be true, more times than not, it's a scam, and don't fall for it. Or get a second opinion, get someone to verify that this is true and that you're not just diving into a black hole and going to be out lots of money. So mine's more of an awareness, but there's a lot of that going on right now. We've tons of scammers on Facebook, tons of scammers on the other platforms, that are just looking to get your money, and then you get nothing in return. So beware of that.
And I think we've talked about this before, Chris, but this was like last year. You found one. You're like, is this guy a scam? Like, I think so.
Yeah. Hmm.
And Chris sends me the link to the guy's Facebook page, and he's got a lot of pictures on there. But there were a couple of dead giveaways, and then there was at the like end there was one really funny giveaway. So I'm squeezing like or scrolling through his pictures, and he's got like a bunch of canaries, bunch of owl finches, and everything. But each picture, the cages are pretty different.
Yeah.
And like I've got some different cages, but like if I take pictures in my aviary, like you can kind of tell they're all in the same place. Like the wall behind the cages kind of matches. This guy was like, these canaries are in like a blue room, and these owl
Yeah.
finches are in like a red room, and the cages are different and stuff. And it's And then you get from like the third to last picture, and he'd only been posting. This is like October. He'd only been posting since July, and you get to like the third to last picture, and I was like, okay, I'm sure he's a scammer now. And Chris was like, how do you know? And I was like, that's my picture.
Yeah.
So, so the guy had gotten a picture of birds that I'd had for sale like 2 years ago somehow, and posted them like he had them for sale. And I was like, yeah, so like I know like that's my band on there. So like I know that he doesn't
Yeah.
have those birds unless he bought them from somebody else.
Yep.
So there's all kinds of those hijinks. Another really common one, and I actually was just telling Chris, I just ran across this in a bird auction, is age line or like age
Yes.
fraud, maybe. So a common thing that people will do, and this comes back to like doing your homework, really looking at the birds. Um, it's tough, but I'll talk about what to do about online birds for this. So passing off older birds that have already maybe like, for instance, in the lifespan of a zebra finch, you might get 5, 7, even 10 years out of a zebra finch if you're lucky. That bird is only going to breed well till like age 4.
Yeah.
So if you get a 4-year-old zebra finch, that's great. That's fine, especially if you're not trying to breed and you can get them for a steal. Um, that's great, but they're going to be tough to breed. You might only get one or two chicks from them or nothing ever and wonder what you're doing wrong. And the answer is your bird is, basically postmenopausal. Um, so it's a pretty common thing, especially online and in auctions and things like that, for people to pass off older birds as young.
Hmm.
So I've run into that, but I just saw it the other day in an auction. A guy was trying to sell some what he claimed were a pair of 3-year-old Senegal parrots. And then mid-auction, you zoom in on the picture and you can see the bird has a band that says 2013 on it. So pretty unlikely it's a closed band that those birds are not 12 years old, which is a big difference from
Hmm.
5, right? More than double. So things you're looking for on an older bird like that, you might see like reduced feather condition. You're going to see kind of like a different beak, a different body, especially if they've been breeding really hard, which if they're the kind of person that's scam selling birds, they're probably also not taking great care of their birds.
Right.
Which I have more stories in this episode about people like that. But if their body doesn't look right, if they look really kind of worn out, like for lack of a better term, if they're a little skinnier, their eyes are kind of hollow, things like that, those are dead giveaways. And then if they're a closed-banded bird,
Hmm.
check the band. That it'll have a typically the way they do the age on a bird band, the year that the bird hatched, they will. It'll be the only number that's like turned sideways. So
Yeah.
for instance, on a 2013 bird, you'll see like some of my birds, I have some bands that are custom bands and they say TJ for the Javiary, MA for Mobile, Alabama, where I live, and then the number is sideways and it says like for next year it'll say like or this year rather, this breeding season it'll say 25. And that tells you the Javiary, Mobile, Alabama, 2025.
Yeah.
So if they're saying these birds are 2, which is like optimal breeding age, but then the band says like 20, well, that's a 5-year-old bird now. So that's not a 2-year-old bird. That's how you know.
Hmm.
But
Yeah, and again, it comes back to try to know the breeders, know where you're getting your birds from. If you're getting them from an auction or a pet store or things like that, and they're not banded, really you're taking a leap into the water and of faith, right? Trusting that this breeder is telling you the truth. But yeah, definitely some good, clear signs to look for in those birds. Jay, I had one a few years back that I thought was pretty funny. Yeah, I love red factor canaries. I'm always on the lookout for some good, red coloration and whatnot. And again, through this local Craigslist that we have here that covers Utah and some of the surrounding states, there was a person on there selling some red factor canaries, and I happened to be going past their city for work in a couple of days. So I was like, hey, like I'd love to come look at them. And the pictures that they have on there, like these beautiful pictures of like solid red canaries, and they weren't actual legit pictures of the canary. And I had asked the breeder to send me some, and they had sent me like some other pictures, and I was like, I'm already going to be in the area, like I'll swing by and take a peek at these birds. And so I go and look at them, and they had caught um, some of the like the red house sparrows that we had, and said that they were red factor canaries. So they were trying to sell them as canaries, and actually, at first I kind of laughed. I was like, I thought they were like playing a joke, and I'm like, for real? Like, are you serious? And first of all, they look nothing like the pictures that you posted. I'm like, so anybody, even that's not an experienced bird breeder, would know right off the bat that this is not it. And actually ended up turning them in because it's illegal to catch and house them in our state. But thought it was pretty
Federally,
interesting, and
yeah.
yeah, and so. Breed or people trying to sell you birds that say they're a certain species and they're not. I've heard of, especially you get a lot of the brown birds, society finches, spice finches. You can get confusion there, things like that. So just be aware and make sure that you're getting the bird that you actually are, or hybrids. Many times they'll sell hybrids as a certain species when it's not. And if you get certain hybrids, they're mules, right? And you can't breed them. And we all obviously are not encouraging to breed hybrids either and keep those in your breeding programs. But there are many breeders out there that have done crossbreeds and hybrids and then sell them as purebreds, right? I got a red face parrot finch from a person that said that they were red face, and when I got the bird, and thankfully we had done some exchanges, so I didn't pay anything for this bird, but I remember getting it and looking at it, and the parrot finch had a blue, so it had the red mask, and then it had a blue lining all around it,
Yeah,
and
you
it was a
sent me a picture of this one.
crossbreed. Yeah, it was a crossbreed between a red face and a blue face parrot finch, and so automatically it just discounted it from my breeding program because I didn't want to continue that, and so it actually was a pretty finch, but so things like that. Just make sure that you're getting what you are out to try and get. There are breeders that potentially could sell you something that is a hybrid or a completely different species that may look alike. And so, and that can be in finches, that can be in your larger hookbills. There's a lot of species that look similar, but are definitely different. So,
Yeah, and I don't want to discourage, and like this happens in parrots, finches, everything. And I don't want to discourage you from buying birds, or especially if you live somewhere kind of, I don't have, I do have two good, relatively local bird stores, but they're still like local bird store. They're an hour and a half each way, right? So
right.
it's not super low. It's not like I can pop over after work, right? It's like got to be the activity that day. So, and I've bought birds from some people online, quite a few,
Yeah,
hundreds
same
really,
here.
probably.
Same here.
So. We're both happy, I'm sure, to help you vet out online people. There are definitely online scams. Some are more obvious than others. But there are
Yeah.
some good online sellers, and there's some online sellers. I don't want to bash anybody online, but there's some online sellers here that are like they're fine, right?
Yeah.
They're not like I'm not gonna be like, oh, definitely use Steve's birds.
Hmm.
They're awesome, but they're if you order red-throat pairfinches, you're going to get red-throat pairfinches, but they might not be in that great a shape,
Right.
so it runs the whole gamut. We're definitely happy to help you vet them out, then there's going to be the people that are the straight scammers that are doing stuff like this is very common overseas. They'll like spray paint spice finches green
Uh-huh.
because they're a brown bird, which they're pretty enough in their own right. It's so dumb, but um, and then you'll see videos online of like bright green um spice finches that they're either like spray painting or dipping in like food coloring. And
Yep.
and it's very common with macaws. I know Tony Silva posted a picture a while ago of a blue and gold that was being sold as a Latino, but it wasn't the right markings for Latino. So it looks like Latino, but what they actually did was just bleach the bird's feathers with like human hair dye bleach, like Chris had on his head
Really?
a minute ago. And so
Which is
not
not
only
good for the birds at
I
all.
was going to say, not only is that not the the correct thing to do, like the bird's going to molt and be a normal color again if it survives. The other thing is that's very detrimental to the health of the bird. So there's all kinds of stuff like that, and you get into especially like some of the less developed countries, and the morality and stuff can out the window.
Hmm. Hmm.
So just if you're going to go try to buy a Latino macaw, figure out what they look like before, and really
Right.
make sure does this match, right?
Right.
Because even the mutations look a certain, they're a uniform mutation typically, to with the exception of like pied, but pied is pretty easy to figure out. So,
Right.
um, yeah, last one that I'll talk about. So this one was an in-person one. Again, I was in high school or college, young, and like just wanted to get new birds. So, was looking for shaft tails. Shaft tails are more rare, and I've told the other half of this. I haven't ever highlighted that this was kind of a scam thing, but um, and shaft tails were more rare than they are now, which they're not super common now, but at the time they were very rare.
Yeah.
And so I was looking for some. I think I only bought one, but guy at a bird show, one of the, traveling big bird expo shows, bunch of birds in cages. He's got shaft tails. Well, there were a couple people at the show that had shaft tails. He was the cheapest one. I'm on a budget. I need one bird at the time. I think everybody else was selling them for 90. He had them for 70. Save the $20. Well, wasn't worth it. So he had one sick bird in there, and I didn't think anything of it and bought. I was like, well, I won't get the sick one. I'll get another one. Well, sure enough, that's the famous story where I brought the bird home and lost like half my aviary. So next year I'm at the same bird show. He's back, and I'm talking to another breeder saying, "Oh yeah, he sold me a sick bird," and they looked at me like you and everybody else. Like everybody buys from him once and learns their lesson. So,
Hmm.
you know, it's one thing if if somebody here has bought a sick bird for me, I'm sure it's happened. It was not intentional, right? And if you
Right.
reach out to me and
Yeah.
said, "Hey, this bird is sick," there's going to be things like refunds. I'm going to help you figure out, if I do think
Absolutely.
it came from me sick. Now, if you get it and then 3 months later you're like, "Hey, this bird is sick," like, that wasn't me.
Yeah.
But if you get a bird for me on Friday and on Sunday it's all puffed up on the perch and it's dying, we're going to talk about it and I'm going to help you out. So this guy, a year in, and that guy was multiple years and he certainly knows he has a problem in his aviary. And instead of doing something about it, he's just keeping on, right? Hoping to sell them before they show they're sick.
Yeah.
So there's just people that are like that. And you just got to be aware of it. And like I said, happy to help you vet. Chris and I both know a lot of people, especially like in our region.
Right.
And then, if you're at like a bird show or a bird expo, ask the people around that person. Don't
Right.
go right up in front of them and be rude, but, just say, okay, I'll come back and then just kind of go, couple down the aisle and say, hey, what do you think of so and so? And they'll usually tell you. People know each other, especially
Yeah.
people who are going to the same shows over and over. Like they've seen that at the last show, somebody came in and cussed the guy out because he sold them birds that were supposed to be 1 year old and they're 8 years old, you know?
Yep.
So
Yeah. No,
there's
I think
ways to
that's good.
figure it out. Hmm.
Yeah. And I don't really have any other experiences, Jay, but just reach out to us. Like Jay said, we've got pretty good connections, especially in our regions, and I'd even say across the United States with our different platforms and different forums that we're involved in all things birds. So if you ever have any questions or doubts, whether it's about a breeder or a bird that you're looking at, like kick us the information and the pictures. Like we'd be happy to try and help you as much as we can. And probably majority of the big bird breeders in the United States at one point or another, JRI has probably touched or come across either owning their birds or interacting with those individuals that we could probably help guide your
Yeah,
decisions on whether you want to go forward or not.
I can definitely play like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon with almost every bird breeder in the United States. Like I might not know him, but I know somebody that does know him, kind of a thing.
uh,
So yeah, always happy to vet and help vet. Even, I still people all the time like, hey, I saw your podcast. I got this question. Like I had somebody ask me today, like, hey, I think I was sold a pair of, which I don't think this was malicious, red throats, paired finches. We've already talked about are super hard to sex. It was
yeah.
sold as a pair, and they're both singing. Have you ever heard of a female red throat pair finch that sings? It's like, that's not super common. Probably, and I explained like I don't think this was done on purpose, but probably you have two males and
Right.
you just need to trade. So
Yeah.
stuff like that, like it doesn't just have to be help my bird is sick or whatever. Like there's really no dumb question. If you send me a really easy like hey, what do I do about egg food? Like, I'm probably at this point just going to send you like my video on egg food and our
Yeah,
podcast on egg food because
right.
I don't want to explain the same thing 1,000 times. Don't be offended by that, but especially if you have a hard one or a unique one, you know, or
Yeah,
if you just have ongoing questions or you're having a problem with mites or something like that, like happy to talk people through it, help them
absolutely.
work
Absolutely.
through this stuff. And last thing I'll say is I have not started setting up for breeding yet. I know Chris is. Uh,
Full in
the two
swing right now.
the two people I will vouch for above everybody else, Chris and myself. So we are ethical bird breeders.
Yes.
So we will, even if you don't buy birds from us, happy to help you, find them from somebody else if we don't have them or those kinds of things. But if you need here in a few months, we should both have some babies going by then. And we're Chris is coming into shipping weather, I know,
Yeah.
because I'm
Woohoo.
fixing to send him some birds Monday, finally, that I've been keeping for months and months.
I know.
Uh, n Not even charging him for the seed. Um, no rent over here, so no, it's been fun. I've enjoyed having them, but they're definitely getting cage worn. They're ready for an aviary.
Yeah,
So
they've got a nice big one waiting for them. So
yeah, and then so if you need help with that, hop on the Perchville section of
yes, please
Missoulin's
do.
website. Use code BirdBrains, get 10% off your order, and yeah, we'll catch you on the next one.
Appreciate you guys. We'll see you.